Welcome back to Falcons Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am Aaron Freeman of FalcFans.com, joined by my co-host Scott Karasik of Pro Football Spot. We are joined this week by none other than our old friend Charles McDonald, who writes for Football Savages. We are going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons. This time, finally, we are actually talking about real football that is actually happening on the field because training camp started last week. So we will be talking about that. We'll be talking about the recent roster move of the Falcons cutting my boy Harlan Gunn. And as usual, we'll be answering your guys' mailbag questions. So first, I want to welcome you back to the show, Charles. We had you, what was it, April? Sometime around then?
Yeah, before the draft.
Yeah. Yes, and you were singing the praises of Vic Beasley, and we got Vic Beasley. And I guess we'll probably get to Vic Beasley a little later when we talk about training camp. Let's get this Harlan Gunn thing out of the way first. I know Scott has differing opinions than me. I have strong opinions about the greatness of Harlan Gunn. We'll see if Charles has which way he leans. He'll probably just say, I agree with both Aaron and Scott. You know, that's what a good guest does. So the Falcons cut Harlan Gunn to make room for offensive tackle Pierce Burton, who played at Ole Miss, was an undrafted free agent for the Minnesota Vikings last season, got cut by the Vikings at the end of camp, wound up in the CFL for a little bit, got cut from the CFL, and is now a Falcon. So I guess what does this new guy, Pierce Burton, bring to the table?
He is a warm body that can actually run a lot faster than Harlan Gunn.
Okay. Charles, you got any thoughts on Pierce Burton? You see any of him while he was at Ole Miss?
No, not really. But I mean, if he's more athletic than Gunn, realistically, he's probably got a long shot to make the roster in the first place. And they're bringing in athletes to fit the new zone blocking scheme. So if he's more athletic than Gunn, he's probably going to get a chance to at least try out for the team. But I'd be shocked if he made the team, or if he was anything more than like a practice squad guy after training camp's over.
Okay.
I'd be shocked.
I watched a little bit of him on Draft Breakdown, and I was a little impressed by him. I mean, he went up against SEC pass rushers, and I'm not going to sit here and say that he's this world beater, but if I was putting him side by side with Jake Rogers, I'd probably say he's a better NFL prospect than Jake Rogers. But, you know, that may not be saying a whole lot. But, yeah, I saw him against Atauchu and D Ford. D Ford gave him a lot of trouble. Atauchu, not so much. So I thought that was promising. You know, the thing about the Falcons' tackle position is their depth is pretty terrible there. So I think he has an outside shot probably of making the roster. If he was a guard strictly, then he probably wouldn't make the team. But as a tackle, you know, there's always a chance.
I'd have to agree with that.
But that being said, my boy Harlan Gunn got cut. I know Scott believes it's because he's not good. I beg to differ. You know, my thing with Harlan Gunn is he was never really a good guard, but because the Falcons really didn't have good guard depth the last couple of years, you know, they kept trying to throw Gabe Carimi and Philip Keith Manley out there as their backup guards. They basically, he was like the best of what they had. I really thought he should have gotten more time at center, but because the team was desperately trying to, you know, mine the greatness out of Peter Kahns, he never really got that opportunity to take advantage of those center snaps other than a couple of practices here and there. And so I just think it was a missed opportunity. He's now with the Patriots. Maybe he'll do something there. I wish him the best. And you had one fan in Atlanta, Harlan Gunn. That's all I can say.
Mediocre players are going to be mediocre players. And he fits under that. What's the word? I'm missing out on the word right now. He fits under that notion. He's just a mediocre player.
Okay. All right. Charles, you got any thoughts on Harlan Gunn?
Uh, I mean, I didn't think he was good. I I didn't. I wasn't sure if he was even going to make the team with this new regime coming over, and I guess that's been settled. So I didn't think he was any good. That's
Okay.
all I got to say about Harlan
All
Gunn.
right. Well, everybody thank Charles for his last appearance on this show because he's never welcome.
Oh no, I can bring him along. Bring him, yeah.
So, all right, now that we got that settled, 2-1, maybe we'll get some different answers. Let's talk about, you know, exciting stuff with training camp. So we're gonna do a different segment than we usually do, as opposed to just talking about what are you excited about. So we're gonna do a little bit of buy or sell on some of this camp hype with some of these guys. A couple of guys people are talking about a little bit more at each different position. So basically, are you going to buy the hype or are you going to sell the hype? And I guess we'll start slow with quarterbacks. Sean Renfrey possibly taking that number 2 job. Are you buying or selling?
I'm selling. I'm selling hard. Renfrey was bad when I watched him last year, and I just don't know where the improvement's going to come from. He's going to have to completely change who he is as a player to be that much more improved.
Charles, where you stand on Sean Renfrey as the backup?
Yeah, I'm selling that one pretty hard. He wasn't good at all. Like when he got reps last year in preseason, I thought he was terrible. And it like TJ, I think TJ Yates he's gonna be the guy by default for backup quarterback job, just probably because he's had playoff experience, like starting with the Texans when Matt Schaub went down that year versus Baltimore. Uh, so I think that experience alone will probably just keep him as a shoe-in with the backup, and he's a better player than Renfrey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna have to make it unanimous. I'm gonna sell on this one, but I'm looking forward to actually getting a good battle this summer, as we didn't really get one last year. Like Yates was pretty god awful for a couple of those games, and Renfrey wasn't terrible. It's just like he was just like he's not as bad as Yates, and then like Yates had like a couple of good games and sort of took the job, and obviously he had experience and whatnot. And I'm with you on that. I think Yates probably ends up winning the job just because of his starting experience over Renfrey. But I'm hoping, crossing my fingers that we'll actually see some good backup quarterback play in some of these preseason games coming up. So I'll buy a little bit of the Sean Renfrey hype. Maybe that means that watching the third and fourth quarter of some of these preseason games won't be as terrible as it was, the last couple of years.
He is a better fit for the zone, West Coast style game, though.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about running backs, and the guy that people are talking about a lot these last couple of days is none other than our replacement for Quiz Rogers, Teron Ward, the undrafted rookie out of Oregon State. Are you buying and selling the hype that Teron Ward is seriously in the mix for making the team and/or potentially getting some carries this year?
I mean, if he's going to make the team, he'll probably carries just because of the injury likelihood that you're going to see from Tevin Coleman and/or Devontae Freeman. I don't know if I see him making the team. I think he is guaranteed a spot on the practice squad, though.
Yeah, I think at the very least he's going to get a spot on the practice squad. Like after I heard his name popping up all over the training camp, with all the training camp news, I went back and watched some of his stuff at Oregon State, and he wasn't bad. Like their offensive line was atrocious, but he was still able to like create some plays on his own. He was pretty elusive in the backfield. He's tough, gritty, like Dan Quinn likes. So I think he's at least going to make the practice squad, but that running back, the running backs from the 53 are going to be kind of tough to break into with, Freeman and Coleman are going to get theirs, and they just re-signed Anton Smith, so it's going to be tough for him to get carries with those three guys in the mix. But I fully expect him to make the practice squad with what we've been hearing the last few days.
Okay. I'm going to buy Teron Ward hype. I've been thinking all summer long that the Falcons are going to basically just wait until the end of training camp to add another running back to be sort of a grinder, that they don't necessarily have a clear-cut guy on the roster. I'm not really buying Jerome Smith as that guy. But I'll buy the Teron Ward hype that maybe he's so good that, reminds some people of Quiz Rogers, and they wind up saying, you know what, we don't really need that. We'll just have everybody run for 50 yards, and we won't need to have short yardage because everybody breaks long runs. So I'll buy Teron Ward as the fourth running back and possibly getting some work this year.
I would think that the power running back is going to be considered Tevin Coleman. Because when he was at Indiana, he did run with some power. He wasn't just some weak running back who all he ever did was break long runs. He had some rough carries where he had 3-4 guys hit him in the backfield, and he still turned him into a 5-6 yard gain somehow.
Okay. Charles, you stand similarly as Scott on who's going to be that sort of short yardage go-to guy? Is it going to be Coleman or somebody else?
I think it's probably going to be Coleman by default. I mean, we don't really have a guy right now. I mean, at least in my opinion, like, we don't really have a guy right now who's going to churn out this tough short yardage on a consistent basis. And Coleman did it the best of the three in college. So I guess Coleman gets the edge right now, but I'm not sure like how consistently he's going to be a guy who's going to carry 2-3 guys up the field a few yards once the regular season starts going. It'll be interesting to see though, because
he doesn't have to. Hopefully the line's better, so he won't have to carry 2-3 guys up the field.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, that's projection too.
All right, let's move on to wide receiver. We're going to buy and sell the guy who's probably been hyped the most these first week of training camp. It's none other than Leonard Hankerson. You buy or sell with Leonard Hankerson as the third wide receiver. I don't know why I can't talk today. Third wide receiver today.
I'm going to buy that one. I don't think Hardy's really ready. And I don't think that that Hester really fits what our boy Kyle Shanahan really wants to do. So Shanahan might have some packages set up for Hester. I just don't see a way that he's the third receiver.
Charles, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to buy that one too. I kind of like Hankerson's outlook for this year. If he can like secure that number 3 job. I'm not sure, like Scott said, if Hardy's ready this year. If Hankerson can get that 3 job, I mean, he's had some buzz. I know he's had some buzz in the fantasy football world a lot. Like, if you like search Hank Time hashtag, like it's filled up with people getting real pumped for him this season. But he's got the tools, and he's in the best. Like, he's in the best situation. He's with the best quarterback of his career so far. So I think like if he can stay healthy and just kind of play up to his athletic capabilities and flashes that we saw in college, I wouldn't be surprised to see him perform pretty well this year in the number 3 role. I'm not sure if Hardy's ready yet to take over that role either. I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to transition from ECU to the NFL.
Okay, all right. I'll make it unanimous. I'm going to buy Hankerson as that wide receiver 3. I'm hoping, Hardy, can get his feet wet early, and then by the end of the season start to push him for that spot. But it does look like Hankerson is going to be their third option at wide receiver. I agree with Scott. I think Hester, he'll get some looks, he'll get some certain plays here and there, probably as the 5th guy. But when he wants a screen, when he wants someone who can, when he wants to put 2 guys on the field that can go deep with Julio and Hester, because Hester still can fly. So you can still use Hester in a lot of good ways. If Hankerson's the number 3, then maybe finally I'll get my wish and Roddy White will move to the slot. And if that's the case, then maybe the shade I've been throwing Roddy this summer will. I don't know. I just won't throw any more shade at Roddy anymore. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll definitely buy Hankerson if it means Roddy gets more opportunities in the slot.
Roddy has to get more opportunities in the slot for Hankerson to be the number 3 receiver. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you put Hankerson outside and you put Julio outside, then it's like let Roddy play the slot where he's at his best right now, where he can do the most damage. So I'll buy that.
That's fair.
All right, tight end. This is glorious. Are you buying Levine Toilolo, the renaissance of Levine Toilolo as the backup tight end to, or maybe even if you're buying him as a possible starter?
I mean, as a number 2 tight end, that's easy to buy because that's what he should be all the time, no matter who's the number 1 tight end, whatever. That's what he is. He is the backup tight end. That's what his role should have been from the get-go. Even after Tony Gonzalez retired, Levine was never a number 1 tight end. He never has been a number 1 tight end. He's a pure blocking and H-back type number 2.
It's pretty easy to buy Toilolo as number 2. That makes a lot of sense, but I don't really see a scenario that he overpasses Tammy this year for the number 1 role. I think I want to see what Moyaki can do because when he was his rookie season, he was pretty impressive. I think he was Kansas City? Is that where he was? His rookie season, and he kind of looked like a guy who was going to break out and kind of be like next wave of like solid receiving options in terms of tight ends, but he never really stayed healthy. So if he can get back to like that rookie where he was as a rookie, and I kind of want to see him get reps at the number 2 position. I think Tammy kind of has number 1. It'll be interesting to see Toilolo and Moyaki battle out for number 2 because they're pretty different players. Like Toilolo, he's kind of like he's slow, kind of lumbering, not the biggest receiving threat, but Moyaki, he's shown the ability to be dynamic in the passing game in the past. So if he can really get back to where he used to be, I think he could be an intriguing target for this passing game.
I've been on the Tammy bandwagon since it could have possibly started. So I'm not going to buy Toilolo as a starter, but I'll buy Toilolo at least just maybe. Kyle Shanahan is going to use him in the red zone. Unlike Dirk Cutter, who just basically refused. No, not even going to play him when we get into the red zone. So I'll buy Toilolo as far as that. I do think Moyaki's probably going to be the number 2. He's a better blocker. But the positive if you're Toilolo is that basically every year Moyaki gets hurt. So there's probably a good chance that Toilolo's the number 2 when the season starts and Moyaki's on the IR. Better than average at least. So that's about as far as I'll buy Toilolo as being the number 2 tight end.
So not a fan at all.
I like Toilolo, but it's just he just was put in a bad situation here in Atlanta. He never fit the offense. He should have never been the starter last year. It's just they basically did everything they possibly could to ruin his career. Never use him in the red zone, which he's a 6'8" receiver. It just doesn't make any sense.
He was a 7th round grade that I gave him. And when they took him in the 4th, I was like, wow, that's a bad pick. They could have had so many more guys that are just better. And I hate that I'm right on that one. because Atlanta made the bad decision. It wasn't like the Saints that made the bad decision. It was Atlanta. So, frustrating. He could have been so much better than he was. So much better. But no, he's terrible. He's absolutely garbage.
Okay, strong words. All right. As far as the offensive line, buying and selling, not a whole lot of hype coming out of anybody as far as training camp goes, but Mike Person has been getting most of the reps as the starting left guard. Are you buying or selling Mike Person as the potential starter?
I'm going to buy that just because you don't tend to have a guy take first-team reps at all in training camp if you don't expect him to start at some point in the season. And if he's starting over Chris Chester, that says a lot. Not that Chris Chester's any good, but it still says a lot.
Are we talking about a person?
Yes, the starter.
Oh, I gotta sell that one. I haven't seen enough, like, personally I just haven't seen enough reps like where he makes sense to start over a guy like Chris Chester, who has familiarity in this offense and has familiarity with the offensive coordinator. He's probably just a better player than Mike Person. I think Person might be getting the reps right now, but I'd be really surprised if he ends training camp as the starting left guard for the offense. That would absolutely shock me.
He's very athletic, and that's the big thing that seems to go along with these. We have been seeing guys like what's his name, Alan Bradford, getting reps in middle linebacker, which I don't buy him being anything great, but who knows? Maybe he ends up having some backup spots and even making the roster.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell Person as a starting left guard. I do think he'll probably get most of the starting reps, and then my expectation is that first preseason game against the Titans, Jarrell Casey is going to end his hopes of being the starter. Person, he's a hardworking guy. I think the Falcons coaching staff are basically rewarding him for his effort and his work in the offseason. He took all the starting snaps all offseason, so they're going to reward him for that. But I think in the end, when he's gotten on the field for the 69 plays over the last 4 years, he's been overmatched by quality players, and whether it's Jarrell Casey or somebody else, I think it's going to continue to be the case, and that's when we'll start to see Chester take over and be the starting left guard. All right, now this is the portion I think Charles is looking forward to. We're talking about buying and selling Vic Beasley. Now, obviously, we're going to all buy Vic Beasley as being great, but the question I want to ask specifically is, are you going to buy Vic Beasley being so great that he breaks Javon Curse's rookie sack record of 14.5 sacks?
Ugh. Well, I'm going to sell that, but I think it's possible. Like, look at who he's going against. Like, first, you got in the NFC South alone, who Jonathan Martin just retired for the Panthers, so you got Michael Oher starting on the left side, and Darrell Williams starting on the right side, and you saw what Vic Beasley did to Darrell Williams in that bowl game versus Oklahoma. He destroyed him the entire game, and then you got Tampa Bay starting Donovan Smith and some other dude at right tackle. That's okay. But you got Donovan Smith. He's a rookie, and he struggled with speed tremendously in college. Pete, the early reports from New Orleans offensive line, Pete's been getting snaps at right tackle, but he's been getting worked by dudes like Kikaha, who I didn't think he was a great pro prospect, but he can play. And then you start the season off. Eagles, that's a tough matchup. When you go to the Giants, I mean that could be 1 or 2 sacks right there, easy.
Wow.
Eric Flowers, Justin Pugh on the outside. I mean, he should be able to get at least 1 sack in that game. I'm gonna sell on 14.5, but I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me to see him get like 11 or 12. I think that's definitely an attainable goal. 14.5. That'd be crazy for a rookie season.
Yeah, I came up with this because I wanted to figure out a way I can get you to sell Vic Beasley. And I figured the only way that I can get you to say something negative about Vic Beasley.
Negative.
Yeah, I know. I just like, couldn't think
He's not gonna get 14, but he'll definitely get 11 or 12. Negative. That's like dude's a beast, but he's not that much of a beast. Hold on.
Not yet.
I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna buy
I
it.
think he'll get 8, 10. I don't know if he'll get 14.5.
You're buying that, Scott? 14.5?
Because we have a coach that actually understands how to use players in their ideal roles. And we've got a guy in the middle who I think is going to cause so much disruption by the name of Rashid Hageman that is going to open up things for guys like Jonathan Babineau and Vic Beasley and Grady Jarrett and Adrian Claiborne and, dare I say it, Croy Bierman to actually make an impact in the pass rush.
Okay. 14.5 is a lot of sacks, though. That's you gotta have like 2, 3 sack games to get to 14.5, pretty much, which is possible. I mean,
he is going against Michael Lure twice. He is going against New Orleans twice with Andres Pete, who does not handle speed well. He is going against Donovan Smith, who doesn't handle speed well twice. He is going against Luke Jekyll, who hasn't looked anywhere close to what he should have been. He's going against Matt Khalil, who has been awful this past year. Anthony Costanzo's okay. Joe Staley's good. Like, he's playing 3 good tackles all year. And he's playing a couple of above-average ones in Houston and Washington. And then New York doesn't have anybody because they got Eric Flowers. But outside of Philly, Dallas, and I'd say San Fran, he's not playing against a good left tackle all year. He's got 2 above average and then a bunch of crap. When you play 11 games against crap, you have a real shot at going for a record like 15 sacks.
okay. Well, there we go. All right. Now we're going to buy and sell linebackers, and this is going to be Scott's favorite subject. Alan Bradford. Are we buying and selling Alan Bradford as the best backup linebacker on the team?
No. We are calling Alan Bradford the special teamer who's going to take over for Nate Stupar. That's what he's going to be. Because of Alan Bradford, we're going to be able to cut Nate Stupar. And I realize those are fighting words, Aaron.
Nate Stupar's greatness. Charles, what are your thoughts on Alan Bradford? You buying and selling him as an impact backup?
I mean, I'll buy that actually, because like what's really his competition? You know, like I wouldn't what's his name? Gray Bizzle on Twitter. I don't remember his actual name, but he wrote an article about how Alan Bradford, you know, he's a really good athlete. He makes some good splash plays in Seattle. I went back and watched a few of his games, like, you know, where he got some decent amount of reps, and he can kind of play like he can make impact plays, like big plays in the box. He's got the speed to travel sideline to sideline. I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe even like sneak into getting a few first team reps, maybe not at weak side linebacker or strong side because they just gave Reed and Durant the big money, but maybe sniff at Paul Warlow's reps. That wouldn't really surprise me, to be honest. I think he can be a really good backup linebacker for this team because he showed some solid capabilities in Seattle, and I trust Dan Quinn to bring over guys that actually know how to play football instead of just fucking around with whatever Mike Smith had. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him make an impact in training camp and even push for playing time during the season. So I'm buying that hype. I'm buying it hard.
Yeah,
I'm gonna sell because no one beats Nate Stupar, so that's what I'm gonna do. No one.
I didn't realize he loved Nate Stupar that much.
Penn State linebackers, man. What's not to love? They're all great.
That's right. You love Mike Hall and all those other guys too, I'm sure.
Yeah, Sean Lee, Navarro Berman, Gerald Hodges.
You did
I'm
love
sure
him.
they got somebody in the pipeline right now.
You did love Bowman. I forgot about that. You adored him.
I mean, they all turn out good.
Not all.
Mike Hall's killing it in Jacksonville or wherever the heck he is. I don't know on that, special teams or whatever.
No, he's
I don't
not.
know.
He's like waived injured.
All right. They all can't be superstars like Nate Stupar. All right, let's talk about cornerbacks. So, are you going to buy or sell Phillip Adams outplaying Jalen Collins for the nickel spot?
I'm gonna sell that all day. I'm going to sell that all day. I don't think Phillip Adams makes the roster when all's said and done. And if he does, it's as the fifth guy. I just, no. Not at all.
What say you, Charles?
Philip Rivers starting at the nickel. Well, I think I'll buy that because I don't like Jalen Collins playing the nickel. Like, I don't really think that's his spot in this defense. Like, if you go back and watch that Alabama game, he had that one play where Amari Cooper just killed him on the slant for the touchdown. And that's like, and those are like the kind of routes you're going to see in the nickel, like slot roll. And you see like a lot of tall cornerbacks, even like Richard Sherman. You go back and watch that San Diego versus Seattle game last year. Eddie Royal was killing him on those quick inside slant routes all game long. And those are the kind of players you're going to see in that role. I don't really think Jalen Collins is a fit in the nickel spot. And it's not really due to his talent. It's just like the profile of tall corners kind of struggling with smaller receivers in space. I think Adams is going to get a fair shot to start for the nickel role, but that's one spot on this team that I haven't really pegged down completely yet because, I mean, it looks like Collins is going to get some reps there. You got Phillip Adams, maybe Southward sprinkles in Kevin White too. That's going to be an intriguing battle as we go through training camp. But I think Phillip Adams might get a fair chance to get some playing time there because he wasn't terrible with the Jets last season. He was a average starting cornerback for the Jets, and you come in and put him in the nickel role with Trufant on one side and then Alfred and Collins kind of battling out for playing time on the other side. I think that makes a lot of sense. I just don't really see at the end of the day Jalen Collins, kind of playing around in the nickel spot.
They've been using him in the nickel spot. He's a better lateral athlete than Alfred is. I think it's a good fit for him, too.
Okay. I am going to sell this. I do think Adams will get a serious run, but I do think in the end Collins will get that spot. Um, yeah, the knock on Collins is um, not that he doesn't lack talent, but it's one of those things where you do kind of have to pay attention to the fact that he only started 10 games at LSU. Now, we all know LSU probably has as much talent as any college program in the country. So being a backup on LSU probably means you can start on, 100 other college programs. But one of the things that you did hear about Collins when he was coming out was that his practice habits weren't ideal, and that was one of the reasons why he started that last season as a backup as opposed to being the starter. And then once he got into games, he turned it on. So I do think that's an interesting thing if that follows Collins to the pros, which it usually does when a guy you hear about a guy not being a great practice guy, but he's a gamer. Maybe practice-wise, Adams will outperform him, but then once we get to the actual preseason games, Collins will make those plays that will make him stand out. And then in the end, the Falcons will be like, you know what? We'll go with the guy who has the upside and the ability to make plays in games, which I don't think really Phillip Adams is that type of dude. So I think Collins will end up winning that nickel spot. All right, so let's finish up with talking about this free safety spot. So I'm assuming that everybody will buy Ricardo Allen as the starter. So the question I have is, are you going to buy Ricardo Allen as a good starting safety this year?
Ooh. Way to give us a tough one, Aaron. Good by everyone's standards, or good as in like top half of the NFL?
Top half of the NFL.
I mean, that's not tough to do because the NFL has a lot of shitty safeties right now. So I'm gonna buy that, but good as in like good? I don't know. I'm thinking average at best.
What about you, Charles?
Yeah, I guess I'll buy it on the premise like he'll probably be I could see him being like ranked around the 16th best free safety in the league, average. Not a guy that's gonna change games the way like Earl Thomas does, but I don't think he'll be a huge liability. Like he's not gonna be a dynamic playmaker, but he's probably not gonna be the reason why you lose a game.
I think he'll make some splash plays. He's got great instincts there. I'm just more worried about his tackling. I'm afraid we've got another Thomas DeCool on our hands, where he gets 4 or 5 interceptions, but you also have to deal with 89 missed tackles on top of it.
See, I feel like I've been selling this all off season long because I've been the one guy that's been saying Charles Godfrey's going to start. So I feel like just to be consistent, I have to start. But like part of me wants to buy it so I can dig myself out of this Charles Godfrey hole. But I'll end up selling him being good. I think he'll probably be average. He'll be a guy. He'll give up some plays. He'll make some plays. What Charles said. He won't be the guy that costs you the game, but you'll be like, no, we can do better than this. Which was basically Thomas DeCool.
At the same time, I think he'll be better than Thomas DeCool if you give him more than just 1 year starting too. He's got a higher ceiling than DeCool had, at least as a playmaker.
Mm-hmm. All right. You guys got any thoughts on some of the guys that have been getting early hype on training camp before we get into these mailbag questions?
Not really.
No, I just kind of want to keep hearing about Teron Ward. He seems pretty intriguing. Definitely going to keep a close eye on him as we start heading towards these preseason games.
I'm excited to see Rashid Higgins now that he's slimmed down to 295.
Yeah, I heard they said he's been looking pretty good out there at practice too. Like the whole front seven in general has.
Yeah, it's amazing what replacing both starting defensive ends and both outside linebackers will do, and starting the right guy at three tech instead of Tyson Jackson.
So I guess that I'll ask this question: does the fact that the defensive line is kicking the offensive line's ass in practice, does that say more about the defensive line or more about the offensive line? Like, does that give you like, awesome, our defensive line is good now for the first time in like ever, forever? Or is it like, oh no, our offensive line might not be as good as we were hoping it's going to be?
I think it's a little bit of both.
hmm Yeah,
Probably doesn't help the person is starting and Tyler Columbus.
like we've definitely made upgrades. Like we've definitely made upgrades on the defensive line, but as promising as the future is for this front seven with guys like Grady Vick, Hagman, they're not good enough where they should be dominating like on a consistent basis. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't be like as lopsided as the reports are coming out from camp. Like I'm happy to see that these guys are having success in practice, but it does give me a little bit cause for concern with the offensive line.
Well, what if Rashid Hageman got his shit together and finally just looks like a monster out there starting day one, every single game, every single practice from here on out? But that's just the case for him.
That'd be great. I hope it happens. I think it can happen.
I think if he's a guy who's 90% of that Gerald McCoy, 80% of Ndamukong Suh, you got a ridiculous player on your hands.
Yeah.
Pretty tall order, though. Gerald McCoy is a beast. Like, not to say that Hagan a bum or anything like that, but 90% of Gerald McCoy is like 90% of Rich White.
It's a bigger Rod Coleman. Maybe not as good as a pass rusher, but still, it's a bigger Rod Coleman.
Yeah, I'm hoping the defensive line kicking the offensive line's butt is because of how many reps guys like Columbus and Person are getting, as opposed to the fact that our offensive line is going to be bad. Because I've been reading all offseason long about, the Falcons' offensive line isn't good. It isn't good. And I'm like, no, we're going to be better than people think. And then we get into camp and it's like, maybe all those people might be right, but we'll see how it goes once we get Chester and Schrader back in there.
What would be amazing is if the offensive line dominates the Eagles in that first game of the season, and then the offensive line dominates their defensive line. I'm not going to happen in that game, but where the offensive line looks competent, then we're going to be like, well, maybe it's just the defensive line really took that stride. Offensive line doesn't have to be great; they just have to be average.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if they're average, then the Falcons will win a lot more games.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into some of these mailbag questions. At Familia_John asks, question: do you think Atlanta will let Julio walk after this season and keep the extra money for cap space?
They don't need the extra money for cap space, so no, I don't think that they do that.
Yeah, I don't see any scenario unless God forbid he suffers like a catastrophic injury. He's here for the long haul. He'll definitely be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's coming back.
Yeah, that catastrophic injury for Julio is a bullet in the brain. He basically has to be dead not to resign him. Yeah, it's one of those things. There's no chance that they're not going to resign Julio. I mean, the only chance I would say is if Julio gets hurt, while he's hurt and rehabbing, he murders a baby, and the Falcons fire Thomas Dimitroff. And all three of those things happen, then yeah, there's a chance that he's not a Falcon in 2016. But none of those things are probably going to happen. So there you go.
Man, we gave up all those picks to get him. He better be here for the long haul.
Pretty much. That's pretty. Like, as long as Dimitroff is here, there's no chance he's going to let Julio walk. maybe when Julio's like 37, then it'll be like, okay, you can go, Julio. You've given us enough.
So basically, when Julio's at the point in his career that Roddy White's at in his.
Yeah.
All right, at GMoney028, asks, in your opinion, who will emerge as the number 2 this year? Roddy White, Justin Hardy, or Leonard Hankerson?
The number 2?
Number 2.
I think it's Roddy White until Roddy White gets beat.
Yeah, it's gonna be Roddy unless he just like completely falls off the cliff this year, and then like it would make sense to see a guy like Hankerson step into the outside role, but it's Roddy's job to lose until he just falls apart, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, who's going to be the guy that gets the most targets after Julio? It's Roddy. Who's going to be the guy that starts beside Julio? It's Roddy. Now, if you're asking who's going to be the guy that consistently shows up week in and week out and is Matt Ryan's second favorite target, then maybe it's not Roddy. Maybe it's Hankerson. Maybe it's Hardy by year's end. Maybe it's Jacob Tamme. He's going to be a big part of the offense on third downs. I think you can make the case that maybe it's not Roddy, but most weeks it'll probably be Roddy. And then probably the 8 games where Roddy is, limping along and not getting separation from Dominique Franks, then it'll be somebody else. All right. At Kayvon Awesome asks, am I crazy for thinking Atlanta could potentially have a top 15 defense this season?
You mean an average defense? No. You're not crazy. You're not crazy at all. Average. Average defense, yes. They can be an average defense. They brought in 6 new starting replacements. They've got, 7 if you include the nickel. There's 7 new guys on defense. They've got a brand new scheme. They've got a coach who actually gives a shit. They've got guys who actually know how to coach. That whole you don't forget how to coach thing is bullshit because Mike Smith forgot how to coach. So, yeah, I think they could potentially have a top 15 defense with the surge of talent they brought in and with the new coaching staff.
Crazy. They could be top 15. So 15 average defense. That's not crazy. I think more likely is for them to be like ranked from like 20 to 24 probably. It's tough to go from the worst defense to middle of the pack. Like that's usually not like a 1-year transition, but I think if things go right, Hagman lives up to his potential. Vic Beasley kind of breaks out this year. Claiborne's a steady presence. I could see them being middle of the road, but I wouldn't count on it. But you're not crazy for thinking that's possible.
I think it's it depends on what you're using to measure. Like scoring defense, I don't think you're crazy. Because basically, if you have a winning season in the NFL, then you're probably going to have a top 15 defense. Like 12 out of the 15 teams that had a top 15 defense last year, had a winning season last year. So if you think the Falcons going to make the playoffs or, finish 9-7 or better, then the chances are good, that they're going to finish in the top 15 in terms of scoring defense because obviously, teams win games when they don't allow points. Now, if you're talking about like total defense, so yards and stuff, I'm not going to say you're crazy, but I don't see that happen. I think they'll probably be somewhere in the 20s. It'll be a lot like some of those Mike Smith defenses where it's like a bend but don't break sort of defense. They still need a couple more playmakers on all 3 levels before I can really say they're going to be a top defense. I mean, the stats, I looked them up. Basically, the Falcons have finished top 15 in total defense only 4 times in the last 30 years. I mean, it's like 1986, 1998, 2004, and 2011. So, I mean, you're basically saying, Like this year's defense is going to be one of the best Falcon defenses we've ever seen. Now, obviously, that stat tells you that that's not really saying much, but it's one of those things where I don't think they're going to be that sort of suddenly they're going to go from dead last in the league to top 15. So it's one of those things where next year maybe, but All right. Vinny Falcon, you basically asked the same question. Asked us how good we think the defense will be. I think we all pretty much gave a ballpark. At David V. Kano asks, should John Asamoah play left guard and Chris Chester right guard to start the season?
Why?
No.
Why flip them? That doesn't make any damn sense.
No. Well, I mean, no, because like if they were both comfortable at right guard, Asamoah is just a better player, so you're gonna play him where he's more comfortable, and put Chester at the other guard spot. And realistically, it shouldn't be too hard. I mean, it shouldn't be hard at all for Chester to play left guard. I don't really see the need to make a switch there at all. No.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you guys on that. All of the above, yeah. No. Asamoah's better. So why move him? And typically you have your weaker guard, with Steve Hutchinson and guys like Alan Faneca being the exceptions, but usually you have your weaker pass protecting guard at left guard, and that's Chris Chester, so no need to flip him. All right. At 14 Team Mocker asks, is Leonard Hankerson a great free agent signing or the GOAT free agent signing?
He's a GOAT free agent signing. He's going to have 1,500 yards this year and 20 touchdowns. And the Falcons are going to win the Super Bowl. But realistically, yeah, I said what I think about him before. Like, I think if he wins the number 3 job and stays healthy, this is a situation where he could put us some solid stats and produce. And if Roddy starts breaking down, who knows? He could end up the number 2 spot across from Julio.
You can make
I think
the best value signing that Atlanta's made under Thomas Dimitroff if he does what Charles is suggesting, because he's only making $1 million against a $143 million cap. So he's not even in 100th of the cap, not even 1% of the cap. So for that kind of value, that's a great free agent signing.
I mean, even if he just secures the number 3 spot for, like, if he's getting meaningful minutes for $1 million, that's a great signing.
I mean, if he gets 30 catches, 400 yards, and 3 touchdowns for $1 million, that's a good signing. It's a great signing. That's a great value signing for that kind of money.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's be real here. It's not as if there's a whole bunch of Dimitroff free agent signings that we're measuring up against. It's Michael Turner, it's John Asamoah, and that's
Tyson Jackson.
It. So Hankerson's going to probably, just if he gets 30 catches, he'll be top 5 Dimitroff free agent signing automatically. Yeah, and if he's actually, better than that, he gets like 60, 70 catches this year, then, he'll rank in the pantheon right behind Michael Turner, right behind Rod Coleman, and Cornelius Bennett as best Falcon free agent signings in a long time. So, all right. At Dirty Birds asks, do you think Atlanta keeps 5 running backs or 6 wide receivers this year?
No, 5 running backs and 6 wide receivers. I mean, it's
5 running backs.
Quarterbacks, maybe, but yeah, I don't see that. That's a lot of resources on weapons, and no, I don't.
Even 5 running backs by itself is a lot.
Like 3 running backs and 5 wide receivers feels fine, I personally think it's going to be 3 and 6, but 5 and 6 just feels like way too many.
Is he including fullbacks in that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That's a pretty big percentage of the roster dedicated to running backs and receivers. I don't see that happening.
Especially when you realize that you've got to include 9 offensive linemen, your 3 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks, so that's 14. I mean, and then you're not going with a fullback if you've got 5 running backs and 6 receivers. So that's basically saying you're going to have 26 on offense, 24 on defense, and 3 special teamers. That doesn't happen in the NFL. That's way too much resources on offense, way too much in running backs and receivers alone.
Doing the math in my head, you could do it if you kept 2 quarterbacks and only 8 offensive linemen, but I don't see the Falcons doing that. So I think 6 receivers is a good bet. I don't see 5 running backs. If we're not including, 4 tailbacks and 1 fullback as the 5 running backs, then no, I don't see 5 running backs. But if you had like 2 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 1 fullback, 3 tight ends, 6 receivers, and 8 offensive linemen, I think that's 25 if my math is not off. And that's usually the normal amount you keep on offense. So, all right. Same guy at Dirty Birds asks, will Quinn still make a move on Jake Long or Evan Mathis?
He should make a move on both. Really build the depth of the offensive line. You got $16 million in cap space. You can't make the argument that you're trying to carry it over to next year. Have Jake Long come in, be a backup at both offensive tackle spots. Have Evan Mathis come in, plug right in at left guard. Have Chris Chester and Mike Person as your backup interior guys on game day. Have Long as your backup outside guy on game day, and then pick a guy that you want to develop. And those are your 9 offensive linemen. If you're going to have backups, you could do way worse than Mike Person, Chris Chester, and Jake Long as your 3 reserves.
Yeah, I think they should probably go after both. Definitely go after Evan Mathis. I'm shocked he hasn't even signed yet, to be honest with you. But the only reason I would be a little cautious about going after Jake Long is I don't know how much he has left in the tank, for being realistic. Even in the backup role, you never know when he's going to go down during the game and need to get pulled out. So definitely go after Evan Mathis. But like Scott said, if you can pull in Evan Mathis and Jake Long, our offensive line is way deeper than it was this time last year. Bringing them both in would be positive, but if they're going to pull in either one or the other, I think Evan Mathis makes more sense.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you guys said. I think they should go after them, but I think, at this point, if Evan Mathis hasn't signed with the Falcons, then he's probably not going to sign with the Falcons. I think all the teams passed on Jake Long because it doesn't sound like he's 100%. So I think they're probably just waiting to see how, and that's the Giants, the Broncos, and the Falcons, to see how everything goes in training camp, and then they'll revisit him at the end of the summer when cuts are made. And I think that, because of that, there's a decent chance that he can wind up back in Atlanta, just because it doesn't sound like Lamar Holmes is going to be coming back anytime soon. And if it's Columbus or Pierce Burton or Jake Rogers as your top swing tackle, Jake Long, even on one leg, is better than any of those guys. So
yeah, that's true. That is true. I forgot we had Columbus for a second.
Because we're all cut.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh man.
We got any more? All right. Last question from TC Lassard. Who's running the Karasik charity account?
I don't know. I'm willing to bet it's some idiots that are on a message board that like to fuck with me. But yeah,
I think it got banned.
it probably did.
Yeah, it got suspended. It only had like 2 tweets, and only one of them was funny.
Yeah, I mean, whoever was running it, they need to like. I got a chuckle out of like one or two of them, but it was like, y'all, you could do better than this. Like, if you're gonna make fun of Scott Karasik, I got years of material that y'all could use.
I want somebody make a parody account of me. That'd be hilarious.
I am already a parody account of myself. Just Dimitrov hate and Peter Concept.
Basically, you're fake Thomas Dimitrov.
I mean, it'd be easy to do a parody account of me. Just diss Thomas Dimitrov the whole time.
Basically.
Yeah. All right, guys, that is our show this week. We appreciate Charles coming on. If you haven't already, if you are looking for a nice introduction to the Falcons defense, the scheme, Charles wrote an excellent article at Football Savages a couple of weeks ago, basically breaking down the basics of the scheme and how certain players fit. You can follow Charles on Twitter at McDraft2. Charles, you got anything in the pipe that we should be looking forward to?
Yeah, right now, myself and Derek Klassen, you can find him on Twitter at QBClass, KLASS. We're just kind of doing like some early draft articles, breaking down some notable players for the upcoming college football season. It's called the 5-play series, so pretty much we're just pulling out 5 plays from this past football season from each prospect that we're detailing, and just kind of putting it together how they paint the picture, or how they paint the picture of the abilities of said prospect. Like yesterday, Derek wrote one on Christian Hackenberg and J.T. Barrett, and I wrote one on Daddy Nicholas today, and I'll have one on Vernon Hargreaves tomorrow. So it's a cool, easy way to kind of get back into gear with the draft stuff, because these prospects are going to be really fun to watch throughout the season. This is a loaded class coming up, man. There are some really good players in this class. That's pretty much it.
All right. Let me know when you do that Miles Jack breakdown.
Will do. He's going to be a future Falcon, hopefully.
Hopefully. Crossing the fingers. Yeah. All right. Well, folks, Scott is at Karasik PFS. I am at FalcFans. Scott is writing for Pro Football Spot. I'm writing for FalcFans.com. Be sure to follow PF Central. Subscribe to us on iTunes. All that jazz. That's our show. We'll be back next week to talk camp. More camp. Friday Night Lights.